Welcome to the Growing People Podcast. I'm John Losey. I want to talk a little bit about growth dynamics, specifically about disequilibrium and comfort zones. So let me start with this very important and key factor that growth starts to happen when we're uncomfortable. Now, that may not be good news, but the fact of the matter is we need this discomfort to tell us that something's going on. And sometimes the discomfort is just discomfort. If I got a rock in my shoe, that's uncomfortable. It doesn't necessarily lead to new skills and competencies. But discomfort that leads to growth is called disequilibrium. So I've got a 3-year-old son, and he likes to spin around in the living room until he gets dizzy. And what he does is he gets a physical disruption in his equilibrium or disequilibrium. The same factors happen when we step into uncomfortable situations emotionally, socially, intellectually, lots of different areas. Those are prompts for growth. So disequilibrium, also known as cognitive dissonance in some circles, it's where you step into a situation that throws you out of whack. It spins you around. Your current systems and competencies and skills don't match the situation and context and environment you find yourself in. Disequilibrium is a key factor when you're trying to help others grow and develop. It's also a key factor to understand for yourself when you start to feel those emotional and social intelligence triggers of this is uncomfortable. Maybe it's about your voice goes up, your heart rate goes up, you start to sweat a little bit. Those are things to step back and pause and ask, oh, am I in disequilibrium, and is this an opportunity for growth? So the way that this fits into comfort zones is that disequilibrium is kind of that line between comfort and growth. So I hear the term comfort zone a lot when I lead workshops. I'll ask, what do you want out of the day? And inevitably, somebody will say, I want to get outside my comfort zone. I want to get more familiar with my comfort zone. I want to expand my comfort zone. But then when I ask them, well, what do you mean by that? There's kind of a dead silence and lots of blank stares coming back at me until somebody usually says something like, well, isn't the comfort zone that place where you're comfortable? Well, yes, but that's not really helpful if we're trying to understand how people grow. They might follow it up with it. Well, the comfort zone is a place where I've been before. It could be a place where I have experience. It's familiar. And that may not always be accurate because there's times when we are in a comfortable, familiar place that we are thrown out of whack. There's other times when we are in a brand new place, but we have the skill set to be able to handle it. So when I talk about comfort zones, I use that concept of disequilibrium. And the way that I define the border between comfort and growth is where failure in the comfort zone is probable or is possible. In fact, failure is always possible. It becomes, you move into the growth zone, you enter disequilibrium when failure becomes probable. And you could even put a percentage on it. As soon as it goes over 50%, it's 50.1111% that you're going to fail, that's when you step into the growth zone. The opportunity to understand and look around the fact that I may not have the skills to be successful in this context. And that's the prompt to growth. So in the comfort zone model, many times you'll see it almost like a bullseye. And in the center is the comfort zone. And then that just outside that ring is the growth zone, that place where you've entered disequilibrium and you start to understand that I need to gain new perspective, skills, and competencies if I want to move move failure back to possible and not probable, back into that below 50%. I've got to add new competencies in order to get there. Now, one of the things about the growth zone dynamic is that very rarely will we put ourselves into disequilibrium, will we put ourselves into cognitive dissonance. Usually we find ourselves in the growth zone by looking in the rearview mirror. We start to feel uncomfortable. We start to feel that disequilibrium. We take a deep breath and look around and go, oh my gosh, I'm in the growth zone. So as an individual, it's important if you want to take advantage of the growth dynamics You need to be able to notice when you're in that disequilibrium or stepped into the growth zone. As a teacher and leader, you need to help people step outside their comfort zone, be willing to risk failure like that by creating an environment of trust, an environment where failure, as much as possible, isn't fatal. There will be consequences for failure, but they need to be willing to find themselves in disequilibrium, take a deep breath, and start to try out new skills, try out different ways of approaching things. That's your job as a leader, as a teacher, as a manager. If you're about growing people, it's about understanding and encouraging them to be willing to step into that growth zone. Now, there's another zone outside the growth zone that we call the retreat zone. And that's when failure isn't just probable, it's assured. As soon as there's 0% chance of success, they'll go into despair and they'll go into retreat. And any growth, any learning, any lessons, any development that's happened to that point is probably going to be lost when they go in retreat zone. They've given up. There is no hope of success. So they throw up their hands, maybe express some frustration. They'll burn out, they'll walk out, they'll disengage. And so sometimes it's just that there's a fatigue factor. You stay in the growth zone too long and you get so tired that success becomes impossible. Failure becomes assured. And you move into that retreat zone. And as a leader, you need to keep watching out for those behaviors of giving up, frustration, sometimes even lashing out. Now, there's another zone that I like to talk about that's well in the very middle, at the very heart of the comfort zone, which I call the don't waste my time zone. When you shoot so far below somebody that they're bored to the point of being insulted. This isn't just not challenging. This is just so far beneath me that they're offended. This is offensive how little you think of me. And so it's so simple that they tend to get frustrated. They tend to get bored. They tend to lash out. They tend to disengage. They walk out. Now notice that the behaviors of the don't waste my time zone and the retreat zone are very similar. The behaviors, what it looks like from the outside. So it's important as a leader and as a teacher that you ask some clarification questions. I've made way too many mistakes where I assume somebody is overly challenged and are moving towards the retreat zone, where no, they're not retreat, they're just bored silly. And I haven't engaged them. And oftentimes on the opposite end too, and this is even the more dangerous one, I see somebody disengaging and I think that I'm boring them. I think that I'm undershooting them when really they're on the verge of retreat. And if you push them any harder, they go over that line and they take off. They know that success is now gone. The possibility of success is gone, so they retreat. Important to realize in these dynamics, disequilibrium is that healthy place where people can begin to explore new competencies and skills. But if you bore them or if you push them too far, you're going to lose whatever progress you made. Now, and this is where the art of understanding comfort zones and disequilibrium come into play. As a teacher and a leader, you need to lead people out, create a place where people can step into disequilibrium and start to learn, but you also need to notice how long they're there and gauge their fatigue of the individual or the group so that you can lead them back into the comfort zone. Because here's an interesting thing. You play with these new skills and competencies in the growth zone, but you don't integrate them into your everyday life, into your practice, unless you go back to the growth zone. I like to think of it's like lifting weights. If you're into working out, you realize I can't lift the same muscle group every day because the way that it works is you lift weights and that actually tears down the muscles, and it's in the recovery that you build strength and you build endurance and you build muscle mass. Same thing with growth. You go into the retreat zone and you explore new competencies. You go into the growth zone and explore new competencies, but you need to go back to this place where you feel comfortable so that you can reflect and so that you can integrate the right competency skills into your new response repertoire, your new abilities, and they become seeded into who you are. Just because you go in the growth zone and start to explore new competencies doesn't mean that you will integrate them into your skill package. So disequilibrium is that line where growth, being uncomfortable is where growth starts. Understanding, stepping out of your comfort zone into the growth zone is all about noticing that disequilibrium. But also notice how long you're out there, because if you're out too long, you'll get tired and you'll retreat. As a teacher's leader, you got to notice when you're undershoot people and they're bored and know the difference between the two. So that's comfort zones, that's disequilibrium, and some insights on how you can work them into your own growth and how you work with other people.